Okay, as we said at the City Council meeting, this came out of the 2019 February 19th meeting. Chief Standridge in this clip is going to discuss the different zones of how the fire might be affected in Bidwell Park, regardless of whether it's the terrain, whether it's the fuel, or whether it's just how the wind might take the fire if there was a fire. So once again, this is Chief Standridge. He's going to give us some information on fire activity. Thank you.
Well, good evening, Council. I appreciate the opportunity to speak about and address the concern that Mark presented, which is the concerns I'm sure you've heard from residents about the potential of a paradise-like fire catastrophically impacting our community. Or for that matter, fires such as Reading, Napa, and Sonoma, and other communities up and down the state over the last few years having experienced similar impacts of catastrophic fire. Prior to that, I'd like to preface this overview with just a quick statement in terms of the fact that while we have wildfire significant areas that are impacted by our wildland-urban interface, they're predominantly located on the east side of our city. So they're fairly isolated and they don't necessarily impact the city as a whole. And we make that assessment predicated on three specific factors that drive wildfire behavior and the extreme nature of those fires as a result of them. But it's important also to note that those same factors have an impact on other types of fires within our jurisdiction that can have an equally detrimental or catastrophic fire loss and with respect to the loss of life. So I'll tie those together because I think it's important to see the continuity between those factors and some of the risks we have in our city. So what are those factors? The factors, first factor is topography. And within that, there are several sub-factors, and the first one is aspect, and that's the way the fuel is oriented north-south, east-west, and as the sun traverses our skies, the sun will heat up the fuel loads differently depending on the aspect, and creating a situation depending on the nature of that aspect, creating a much more rapid warming fuel load with decreased moisture. And that'll lend itself well to a rapid ignition source or rapidly ignite and spread as a result of that. Similarly, terrain will either create a barrier or facilitate the rapid movement of flames from one point to another. So if we look at barriers, those would be rock outcroppings that have very little vegetation, sheer cliff walls, large body of water that will prohibit the fire from progressing. Conversely, you'll have other terrain features such as draws that will actually facilitate a much more rapid movement of fire up through those draws and over the crest of hills. And upslopes will also have a similar effect, but in a much broader sense, in so much as it will preheat the fuels in front of the fire front. Therefore, it will start to accelerate as it gains speed or as it gains momentum up that hill as well. The last factor that affects fire behavior is weather. And so as the temperature goes up, the humidity goes down, as does the fuel or moisture content in the fuels. And then likewise, the winds are very problematic. In fact, I would assign that the most problematic from a firefighting standpoint, because you can have a large fuel load with intense fire behavior, but without wind, it's relatively contained. As soon as you entrain wind on that, it starts to impact the fire much more profoundly, and that's where we struggle to maintain control or get ahead of the fire front in order to contain it at a level that creates less damage or catastrophic events. In addition to that, the winds also have an effect in the structural firefighting, and I'll point to that and try to make a good case for why those two are so problematic in all firefighting capacities.
If you have any questions or you'd like to find out how you can help make Bidwell Park safe, strong, and prepared, please follow us on Facebook, like our page, share it with your friends, and maybe you too could adopt a goat or take part in some other program that brings more fire safety to Bidwell Park. Once again, Bidwell Park safe, strong, and prepared. Thank you.